Tony Khan's most recent outburst has some fans crying foul, and what the hell is it going to take for a wrestling match to stop over a concussion? It's This Week in Regret. Hello and welcome to everyone. At AEW Double or Nothing this past Sunday, many fans were concerned over Jeff Hardy's well-being during he and Matt Hardy's match against the Young Bucks. And now we're learning there's a good reason for that. Matt Hardy revealed in his podcast this week that Jeff was actually, quote, not loopy early in the match and has no recollection of what happened in the ring. As Matt described on The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, Jeff even had to be guided through the match by the other three wrestlers in the ring that night. Currently, there is no official word on Jeff's condition nor a timetable as to when he'll be back. Oh good, so he wasn't under the influence, he just got a concussion in the match and kept wrestling, which sounds like a big violation of concussion protocol, wouldn't you say? I mean, I get it. In the heat of the moment, a lot of wrestlers will say the show must go on. There's that mentality, you have to push through any and all injuries in order to keep the fans happy. But we also know so much more now about the risks of concussions, especially trying to work through active concussions. And it boggles my mind how no wrestling company, especially AEW, seems to have gotten it right so far. If Jeff was as banged up as Matt says he was, then why was he still able to wrestle, let alone in his normal style? Shouldn't a referee or a doctor have stepped in at that point? Well, I guess if Matt was able to keep wrestling Sammy Guevara after his head splat on the concrete 2 years ago, should be hunky-dory for Jeff, right? The day that a match in AEW or WWE or Impact or wherever gets stopped for a concussion will no doubt live in infamy, but is that ever going to happen? Concussions are a very real threat in wrestling. We have seen what concussions can do to people, especially if they try to work through them. If wrestling companies truly care about performer safety, then they need to be able to stay on top of stuff like this and assess the risk in the situations and make those hard decisions to stop matches in case somebody is hurt. Run time or ratings or wrestler pride be damned, and that's all I gotta say about that. Staying with AEW, some fans are criticizing owner Tony Khan over his expletive-laden outburst at the Double or Nothing media scrum Sunday night. When he was asked about Eric Bischoff's recent claims that CM Punk was a financial flop at AEW, here's what Tony had to say.
He said that you were the biggest financial flop in wrestling.
That's fucking bullshit. No one person has ever made a more positive impact. We just did a record pay-per-view buy. Every pay-per-view, he's done a 4 pay-per-view cycle now. Every one of them was the record. This fucking guy, he fucking did the Friday Night War. He did the First Dance. He's done the record Double or Nothing. He did the record All Out in his debut. He was a big part of a record Full Gear, a great match with Eddie Kingston, and fucking he wrestled a bunch of young guys, a bunch of veterans in between there. Will Hobbs, Daniel Garcia, God damn it. And then he showed up, did the biggest program in terms of everything, TV, box ever with MJF, and then he did the goddamn main event here. He's the biggest part of financial success in the history of this company. Let's fucking go!
First of all, it's worth pointing out that Eric Bischoff hasn't had a money-making idea in about 25 years, and that idea wasn't even his, so I would take his opinion with a grain of salt, and it was probably best if Tony Khan didn't even address it. But he did, so the question is, was Tony Khan out of line in his response? And I would say no, he wasn't. You know, it's the end of a long night, probably feeling loose, feeling a bit invincible. It probably felt good for him to get that off his chest. There are those out there who say it's unbecoming of the owner of a wrestling company to act that way, for him to yell and swear like he did. And you know what? I absolutely agree. He should have picked a fight with the reporter instead, or taken shots at TBS every week on television, or challenged to fight his rival on pay-per-view. My point being, you may not agree with what he said or appreciate the way he delivered the message, but is showing a little bit of passion when trying to defend your product the worst thing a wrestling company owner has ever done? I would say not. Now, I'm not saying that everything Tony has done in response to things has been perfect. The way he handled the Big Swole debacle late last year, for example, was the worst. But it's his show, it's his scrum, and as the public face of AEW, it is his neck on the line. You might not like it, but don't say that Vince McMahon would never do something like what Tony did this past Sunday, because some would say Vince wrote the playbook on that kind of behavior, which again was his right to do. But seriously, be more mad about the concussion stuff, not this. In some AEW adjacent news, Ring of Honor fans who've been waiting for an update on the future of the brand may be getting an answer soon. Fightful is reporting that ROH will return to pay-per-view Saturday, July 23rd for Death Before Dishonor in Lowell, Massachusetts. No official word on that show yet or when tickets would be made available. There's also no update on a return to television, though Tony Khan has been saying as of late they are working on it. Well, it's very exciting news if true. I know that after Supercard of Honor, I was definitely curious to know what ROH under this new vision and leadership would look like, or where it would take us, or when things would happen. And now this seems to be the first sign that things are kind of moving in that direction. Now, I am kind of concerned about the glut of wrestling pay-per-views across all these different companies happening over the summer. This being added to it is just one more thing we all gotta watch, but ultimately none of my concern, since it's not my money on the line. But if Death Before Dishonor is a go July 23rd, I'm all for it. Former WWE star and possibly current AEW star Jake Atlas faces domestic assault charges this week after an alleged incident between he and his boyfriend in Orange County, Florida. According to the police report, the incident allegedly took place on May 23rd when Atlas and his boyfriend went to a female friend's house to engage in sexual activities. Then Atlas allegedly lashed out at his partner for paying more attention to the woman than him. A verbal argument turned physical, and eventually police were called. Atlas signed a no-contact order agreeing to have no communication and to stay 500 feet away from the alleged victim. He is set to be arraigned on June 28th. Now, it's not my place to speak on alleged incidents like this, so I won't, but to me the most interesting part of the story is AEW's lack of response toward this. Now, he did debut for AEW earlier in the year and then immediately was sidelined with a torn ACL. He got the Jake Atlas is All Elite graphic, but he's not on the main roster page. There seem to be a lot of conflicting reports as to the nature of his actual AEW deal, but as far as I'm concerned, until AEW declares one way or the other, he's still their guy. The silence is deafening, as they say, and if Atlas is still under contract with them, I think they're under an obligation to make some kind of statement about it. But far more important than that, I just hope that everything is okay between Jake Atlas and his people. I hope things are worked out. I hope cooler heads prevail, and I hope that everything is okay on Jake Atlas' side of things. As Ric Flair prepares to wrestle his last match July 31st at StarCast in Nashville, his former employer has announced a new work all about him. WWE announced on Twitter this past Wednesday that a new documentary is in the works with Fox Sports reporter Tom Rinaldi that promises, quote, never before revealed history about the one and only Nature Boy. Now, this news definitely surprised me. We knew last year that Flair was granted his release by the company, and then after that Plane Ride from Hell episode of Dark Side of the Ring aired, WWE did everything they could to unperson him. So the fact this documentary is coming out soon raises a lot of questions with me. Maybe they're going to time the release of this documentary with StarCast weekend to try and cash in on that action. And my biggest question, just what kind of never-before-revealed history is there with Flair anymore? Needless to say, I am very curious about this production. Usually their documentary game is on point, and some of the best work I've seen in wrestling has been WWE's documentary team over the last several years. So I guess we'll have to wait and see for more info and just what kind of direction they'll be taking with this. Well, a fourth-generation wrestler in training has announced she's going under a new ring name. This past week, Simone Johnson, the daughter of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, announced that her stage name will now be Ava Raine. The 20-year-old's been training with WWE at the Performance Center since 2020. No word yet on when we'll actually see her in the ring. Well, it's no Michael McGillicuddy, but it'll have to do. Seriously though, I think it's a smart move by Simone to change her name to try and separate herself from her father. I mean, people are going to make those family connections regardless of what her name is. Look at Braun Breaker in NXT, for example. I think if she were to take up that mantle and have a name similar to Dwayne Johnson or The Rock, that would set her up for even more scrutiny. Some fans might not dig it, but it does add a little layer of extra protection for the wrestler in that instance. Maybe David Flair would have done better if he weren't promoted out the gate as the son of Ric Flair. Then again, I saw how he wrestled in WCW, maybe not. Congratulations are in order to a couple of wrestlers who picked up some cool acting gigs this past week. First, Deadline reports that Samoa Joe has landed a role in the new Twisted Metal TV series. The ROH TV champion will be playing the physical role of the killer clown Sweet Tooth, while the character's voice will be performed by Will Arnett. The action comedy series based off the PlayStation video games will also star Stephanie Beatrice, Anthony Mackie, and many more. Deadline's also reporting that WWE's Liv Morgan will have a role in the dark comic thriller The Kill Room. The movie also stars Uma Thurman, Samuel L. Jackson, Debbie Mazar, and more. The report says that Morgan will be playing an art purist who bemoans the vapidness of art dealers. I think it's great to see wrestlers get opportunities for acting jobs like this outside of the wrestling sphere. You love to see it. And also as somebody who grew up playing the hell out of Twisted Metal Black on his PS2, I'm very excited for the Twisted Metal TV show. I'm curious to see how Samoa Joe and Will Arnett coincide or work together as the body and the voice of Sweet Tooth. I want to see how this show interprets not only that character, but all the other big characters from the game as well. We wrap things up with my favorite thing in wrestling this week, and one independent wrestler out of California may have had the best week ever. Meet Jack Banning, also known as Hood Slam's Drugs Bunny. You may recall seeing him this Wednesday on Dynamite as the security guard who served Wardlow his papers and got laid out in the process. But that isn't the only time he appeared on TV recently. Eagle-eyed observers of daytime television may also have seen him on The Price is Right last Thursday, dominating the games and even winning the big showcase prize at the end. Who needs a class action lawsuit when you've got a jet ski? That's going to do it for this week in Regret, folks. Quick programming note, my review of Hell in a Cell will be delayed till later next week because I'm going to be out of town this weekend. I'll be in Oregon for POW Pro Wrestling. So if you're going to be in Eugene Saturday night or Salem Sunday night, please go check out powprowrestling.eventbrite.com for tickets and info. I'd love to see you there. But until then, folks, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.